I'm gonna go ahead and call the workshop to order. And I believe we're gonna do things a little different. So we'll, start out. Are you ready to do the discussion of the school concurrency? I think you're doing that one, David.
Yes, it's going to be a very brief discussion. Just wanted to put this on here to let more of a status update, let council know that we have a meeting scheduled tomorrow or late Thursday with a consultant that has drafted some of these ordinances in the past and help us draft an ordinance or at least work through the issue, see if it's applicable to what we're trying to do. And if it is something that we feel like council should pursue, then have them give us a price to and a proposal to draft an ordinance and submit to council.
And this is the York School District impact fee we're talking about? Or?
No, this is York, school concurrency planning. One of the things that was asked by the Planning Commission during RECODE, and specifically what that does is allows school districts to be consulted when there are new developments, similar to the way that we consult utility providers as to their water and sewer availability. They would let us know of their school district capacity, okay, and whether or not they have the ability to serve students and the capability and the desire. So it's kind of similar to that, okay, but it's called school concurrency planning, okay, and certainly would have impact on other school funding options. Yeah. And so I think it's something we need to look at in its entirety and make a recommendation as to whether or not we feel like we should follow what was a planning commission recommendation to at least explore.
Okay. And I knew that was something else you were looking at from talking to Alice and stuff. I just wasn't sure which one we were discussing tonight, which one it was. So.
Yeah, quick question on that. So is it the fact that if there's a development going into a specific area, you would actually have a meeting with the school districts that are impacted by it to let them know in beforehand, or to make them part of the feedback as when it comes to planning of it?
The latter, which is if probably during the preliminary plat process, we send out a questionnaire now in a lot of cases to the school to ask them how it would impact. What we would do with this, just like a utility, we require a willingness and capability letter. Okay. We would have a provision for the school district to weigh in as to whether they had capacity.
Gotcha. Okay, very good, thank you.
Anybody else, any questions for him or comments before we move on to the next thing? Okay, then I guess I think I was told that Michael's going to go next, I guess, so discussion on York County park fees.
And I do have a presentation, so we'll go through that. Go back to it.
I see we're getting some parking spaces at the Veterans Park.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Okay, good evening, council. We had talked about park fees at the retreat, and I know there was some feedback and some discussion since then. So we, being management and parks, I've got Pat here, who runs Ebenezer Park, has been in this business for a long time, to really look at, is this right? Is this fair? Is this what we want to do? So I think we've made some adjustments, which I'll highlight in the presentation, and we can have a discussion on that. I did kind of want to start by saying, what's the purpose here? What are our real objectives in this? And one of the foremost things is Allison Creek is going to open this year, so we need to have fees in place when that opens. We expect that to be in March of 2023. We're hoping a little earlier, but at the same time, if we're going to go ahead and do fee ordinance now, we just figured we go ahead and kind of wrap everything up in that. So that's one driver, is Allison Creek opening. The next thing is we're talking about is charging day use fees year round instead of Memorial Day to Labor Day. We think this brings us more in line with some of the state parks and some of the other way operations are doing. And I'll talk to revenues and expenditures later, but we think that can help us in some ways in terms of how the park operates and how we operate out of the general fund for Ebenezer Park and Allison Creek Park. And subsequently, we would say we'd go to an annual pass instead of a season pass. If we do approve going to a year-round structure. So instead of season pass, which you buy before Memorial Day, you could buy the season pass at any point, and it would be good for one calendar year. So you'd have that season pass or that annual pass, and it will allow you access to both Allison Creek Park and Ebenezer Park as an added benefit. We also want to switch to our day use fees to individuals instead of vehicles. That's a significant change, but I've talked that through with Pat. He thinks we can work that, and we think it's a more fair structure. If you go in as a one person right now, you pay a flat per vehicle charge. We haven't raised fees since 2011, and as you'll see, we're a little bit behind some of where the state parks are, but we can talk about that. So we think it's a more fair and structured system to charge per person instead of per vehicle. In addition, if you have pedestrians come in, which there is a pedestrian trail that will be at Allison Creek, so you could have folks walk in and they would pay their fee as well. So that's really what we're looking at on the day use fees. We're looking at MOS fee increases to the Ebenezer Park RV in categories. We'll also have an Allison Creek RV fee and our tent camping rates. Right now we allow tent camping at Ebenezer Park in an RV site. They are not concrete pads, so you can pitch a tent on those sites. At Allison Creek, it will have a concrete pad, so you can't pitch a tent there, but it will have primitive campsites. So there's a separate charge for that. And then, as I mentioned, Allison Creek park fees. So our financials, this is where we've operated over the past 5 years. I did a deep dive, and I wanted to look at where we are in terms of revenues and expenses, and you can see generally we've been operating in the black, the blue being the revenues and the orange being the expenditures. During COVID, we were down a bit, and the park was down a lot of places for renovations, so we had a significant drop off there. Last year, 2021 was a much bigger year than we expected. As you all know, we had the traffic discussions, and but all in all, a lot of usage at the park, and that's a good thing. In 2022, we're ahead. One thing just to note in here is that these are the operating costs. This does not capture capital. So in my discussions with Kevin right now, when we look at capital renovations and things, we're not, this is budget only for operating, but we do want to have a little bit of reserve set aside to offset some of the capital repairs is kind of what we're thinking here. Not a lot, but a little bit is in terms of what we're thinking. What does that mean? Well, you can see we're right about, I would say, 10 to 15% above the revenues are above the expenditures last year and a half. This does include the store revenues as well. And I also wanted to point out our revenue breakdown. This gives you a sense of where the revenues come from at the park. Primarily, as you would expect, is the RV camping. That's the large slice of that pie you see in blue there. But next is the day use fees, and that's not an insignificant component of revenues at the park. And you can see where we've been over the past 5 years. Again, RV camping leads with the day use fees, and then we've got our other fees, which we'll discuss later. At the bottom, I've got our day use guest count, and you can see we were 35,000, up to 37,000 in FY18. FY20 we dropped COVID and the renovations, and then I have no count there last year, and that's because the overwhelming numbers at the park, it was difficult for staff to keep up even with the counts.
So that's
So
that's more than doubling the day use.
Right, he thinks it's probably in the 60,000 ballpark. And again, if you go to, individuals vice vehicles, you're capturing some of that revenue, and it's a more fair structure again, like we said. So with this, I also wanted to highlight some comparison with some of the state parks. They charge year round, as you can see, Lake Wateree, Lansford Canal, and Devil's Fork. So we're not, if we go to an annual fee structure, we're not out of out of alignment with the rest of the state parks. You can see where the adult charges are, and these are per individuals. And right now, we're at $5 per vehicle. I'll show you what we're talking about on the next few slides. Seniors get a bit of a discount, and children get a discount too, which we were also going to propose in our fee structure. And then the annual passes, they have several menu items, if you will, to choose from, all of which have a window hanger, which our annual passes will. So in the case of our annual pass, you'll pay your money, he'll issue a windshield hanger, and then with that, you can take your whole family in. So that for those annual passes, it's not a per person. You don't have to have 4 annual passes for a family. You have 1 pass. That allows you in with that hanger, and it can be moved from vehicle to vehicle. That's a change from a sticker, which I think we used in the past. So we think that will allow you to move it from one vehicle to another. Could some folks perhaps, lend it out to a friend? I mean, yeah, that's possible, but we think that would be offset by the convenience and all those sorts of things. So the All Park Passport gives you a lot more parks. There's 47 parks, and then there's a All Select Passport, which gives you 35 of the 47. And that's primarily what they sell, is a slightly lower passport amount. And then there's a senior passport rate. So that's our comparison. Now, I think we sent out the fees ahead of time, so I'm going to get into that discussion now so we can talk through what we're proposing. Again, we had proposed some numbers previously at the retreat. We have since, reconsidered some of the concerns, and we specifically look at York County residents. Can we, give them a bit of a break, and on both the day use fees and the annual passes. So we are proposing slightly lower fees there. So for a York County resident, if you're a family of 4 and you have 2 children, you're going to pay $8 for day use. You see where that compares to the states. It's in the ballpark. And if your children are under 6, then you'd actually pay $6. And right now you pay $5 to get your entire family in by the vehicle.
One quick question, is there a
Sure.
plan for false passes? You can prove there's a purchase?
Lost pass, they would have to purchase the whole meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of what the state, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the state parks will give you one, with proof that you had purchased one. And we can look into that, more specifically. We thought about
Me
it.
driving Jeeps and stuff is not uncommon for
Exactly.
something.
Yeah, hopefully though, the goal is that once you leave the park and put it in your dashboard,
Yeah.
you only take it out when you come to the park.
Okay.
They'll have numbers on it.
Get that on our, we've got
Yeah.
mock-ups that are introduced that, only use when you're in the park, please remove and put your dash price.
Put it on your dash.
Something to that effect.
Is on those window hangings, is there a scan bar on those things that they'll just swipe it, or when they go in, or is?
No, they'll just present it.
Just
we'll
present
mark
it?
them as, season pass holders, and they'll just
Okay.
go through the gate.
Will those
Yeah.
have numbers on them though?
Yeah, they'll be
Yes.
numbered passes.
So it'll be a serial number.
There'll be a serial number, that's what I was thinking, that.
Right, each pass will be numbered so for inventory purposes.
Right.
We'll do that.
Right, because as people pass it, it's gonna be kind of hard to see. And is there any thought around having it also have like a little keychain one that you can?
So there'll be a detachable part at the bottom.
Yeah.
That you can pop off and use. Now, if you're in that is particularly for people who may want to walk through the park.
Yeah.
Like from the neighborhoods, or if you're on a motorcycle. So they can present it, because you
Yeah.
obviously don't have a place. But if you're in your vehicle, it needs to be displayed on the mirror.
Okay,
Because otherwise, you're giving the bottom half of
Yep.
your. say,
Right,
spouse,
somebody else,
and
right,
she's coming in
exactly,
with
it's
the
like- yeah.
keychain, so
right,
the bottom is specifically for motorcycle, bicyclists, or people walking through the park.
How about visitors to the campground?
So we will not charge. We have never charged for them, and we won't.
okay,
As long as they do not take a parking space. If they are taking a parking space, then we need to charge them. So that's our thoughts on that. And we tell the campers that upfront.
and based on this fee structure, if somebody drives in single, one person, you said it's the vehicle cost of $5?
No, they'd only pay 3.
Oh, they're only
So
still
a
gonna
single
be
person
3.
would actually pay
Okay,
less
gotcha.
than they do right now.
You and
Okay,
your wife go, now it's 6 instead of
now
5.
it's 6, okay, gotcha.
So again, we think that's a more fair structure. My concern, and we talked through this, is, we had a lot of people backing up at the gate. Can we count? But I think, we've looked at some options in terms of point of sale, being able to send folks down the line, check them in before they get to the gate to help expedite, get folks through. So I think Pat's working with his staff to be prepared for that.
Is there any time frame during the day, say they get there at 4 in the afternoon? I mean, is there, what time's the park?
So during the summer, the park closes at 9, starting, I think, May the 1st.
Yeah.
To around Labor Day, September 1st.
Yeah,
And then, different, as the sun gets lower, we set that back. But if you
Yeah.
come in at 4 o'clock, you're gonna pay
right,
the same fee.
same fee, right.
Now, if you're coming, we'll probably have staff there as far as the gate until about 8 o'clock at night. So if you come in that last hour during the summer,
Yeah.
you're not gonna.
You're not gonna get,
So, just as an example, because I've done this plenty of times, especially with a kid out on a boat or something, need to run down there and pick them up. We'll have to pay to get into the park
If
just to
you're
pick
just
them up.
riding through or picking up someone, they tell us at the gate. Of course, we kind of make a mental note of it
Yeah,
and let staff know down there, concealed parking, you may for longer than a few minutes. And just say if somebody wants to come in and say, hey, we just want to go in for a few minutes, you typically won't charge it.
okay.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
They can't hear you on the,
She'll say all that again
Tag
now,
team.
Pat.
Everything I've said.
you just told me, I couldn't really hear.
So on the annual passes, we had originally proposed, I think, 60 for York County residents. We looked at that really hard, and we think we can, make it 40 a year. And it's only a $10 increase, but you're gonna get both parks. It's a
Yeah.
full year. We think that's a pretty good deal for a resident. And the non-residents, well, guess what? We think, if you're non-resident, we'll just keep it where we had proposed earlier. And that may, Pat knows a few folks who come from out of the county, but,
Yeah.
if you're in the county and you're a resident, you're paying in the system, we think, we want to give those folks a break.
Well, I like the idea of bundling the park, like put, 2 parks or eventually 3 parks or whatever,
Right.
that you can get and to give people a chance to really start going to other parks.
Yeah, exactly. Now, another thing I'm gonna go to, and I think we talked about this, I'll come back to RV camping. I don't know why it's not advancing. Night access cards, I know this question came up earlier. If you get an annual pass, can you get a night access card? We looked at this one really closely too, and we think those are 2 separate types of users. Basically, what the night card does is you get a card, and so when his staff is not there, the gate's closed, it's locked, there's nobody there. You can take your card, contact, and you can come in the gate. So if you wanna go fishing at 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, this gives you access all year for both parks, $20. Right now it's 15. And then, those folks could stay in there and then, they leave when they leave. Whereas the annual pass, they're gonna come in basically when the park opens and whatever those hours are. So we've talked to some folks, we've done an informal poll, and we think, the users who have the night access card like the idea of having to pay just for that and not have others come in at the same time.
So there will be a way for them to enter a code or do something to
Yes.
get into the park after.
Yeah,
Yeah, if they want access to the park after hours, basically, they request a night access card, and we go through, it's very specific to them, and they have to sign for it, they have to give us vehicle information, and then that card is renewable every March 1st. Like, if you buy it, which we have people for duck season, they'll buy them in November, and knowing they're gonna have to renew it in March. That's just the way it works. Because we have to enter all those into the system at one time and remove them. And if we have a problem with one of those, we actually can delete them from the system, and they won't have access if they misuse it, because there's a policy that they have to sign off on for that.
and the important thing is, a boater or fisherman comes in the morning, he could park in a secure place, there's not gonna be anybody coming and going, and they like that idea that, the parking is secured and nobody else can come in there and do
What
that type of thing, particularly at night.
What time is considered night access?
Anytime the park is closed.
Okay,
So outside normal operating hours. So if
So-
the park closes at 8 PM, we'll say, at 8:30, it'll be locked, there'll be nobody there, they could still use their pass.
and the park opens at what time in the morning?
7.
So they could get there at 6:30 and they could park there all day?
That's correct.
They could be there, out there all day?
They could.
They just have to arrive early?
They absolutely could.
Okay.
Always gonna be somebody's gonna figure out how to abuse the system.
It ain't gonna be me coming in at 6:30, I
Yeah.
promise
It
you.
ain't me either.
If they're willing to get up at
It
6:30.
won't be me, but it
come
could
in
be
before
somebody.
his
You
staff.
got folks?
Yeah.
No, I feel a little better about the difference between the two now.
I just
so.
want to highlight that because
Yeah.
I think that had been a question there.
Yeah, that was a concern I had, so.
So I'm gonna go back to the, if there's no questions on this, we can talk about it a little bit more, or we can keep pressing through.
I'm more interested to see the expenses that we have out there.
The expenses?
Yeah, the expenses, if we're talking about Ebenezer Park. I mean, how, is this a money-making machine? Is that the way we're looking at it, is to fund both parks?
Well, I think we're looking at it, I'll go back to this slide. And I do actually have some slides in backup. I can go through each year, the actual expenses. It's broken up into basically personnel costs, which are his staff, Pat and his staff. It's the operating costs, which is everything from fuel and
Yeah, your electricity,
electricity, water and
yeah,
sewer.
which are very high, you know, that's.
About to go up 11% too.
Is it? I hadn't heard that yet, so that's good to know.
I knew that was gonna come up.
I need to adjust my budget.
And his store, which is a separate account, actually. So primarily, at the RV, just what we mentioned, your expenses, I think we pay Comporium, we pay water and sewer, we pay electric, and then your staff, and then groundskeeping, we have a groundskeeping contract for the park. Those are kind of the big ticket items.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I'm sure our staff will go up. I'm sure we'll have
Yeah,
costs
seasonal
with
staff.
tags, all of those little things. And if you're charging people a season pass, you want to make sure you got lifeguards on staff out there for the swim area, correct?
So we are not hiring lifeguards. We are swim at your own risk now. But we will have staff down there that will have eyes on the swimming area and that will run our concession stand down by the lake. And then
Okay.
we'll have the gatehouse staff and then some assistant ranger positions who will kind of, and part of that position was that, especially with us opening Allison Creek, and we have noticed over the last few years that, staff doesn't stay around 30 years like we have. So that's always a turnover. So we're hoping that these assistant ranger positions will eventually want to become full-time rangers. So they're already trained and we're just plugging them into a full-time position at some point. So we reorganized that last year and added that position. So,
And again, just to highlight, this is not including capital. We're not including that. So anything in addition we could use for capital.
So you're kinda hoping that some of this might pay for whenever, I don't know, a repair of some sort needs to be done instead of it hitting the capital project. It's part of the expense of having to do that.
Right, because we're looking at some improvements to the park. We'll call it phase 2, which will include, roads, improved pads, restrooms. We've got a lot of complaints about the restrooms. I know we talked about this, and they weren't included as part of the renovation, so that would all help offset some
So
of those.
are we putting aside, it looks like we got about 50,000, so what's that, about 8%? profit?
We're at 8 or 10%.
Yeah, and Brandon, this is a touch on what Robert said. This is how I look at this park out here. It needs to cover its operating, and I wanted to have something set aside for repairs and maintenance. You have your house budget, you never put any money aside for house repairs, you're gonna end up in the red in a bad way. The biggest idea is, we don't want this park to be a quote-unquote moneymaker. We'll never be transferring money to other funds or doing this and that with it. But what you see up there right now with the revenue expenses, it took a long time for Pat to get it there. And we expect Allison Creek to operate in the same manner, where we're going to be in the black year over year till we have money to put towards our capital needs. It'll never completely pay for the capital investment there, but it will go towards that.
I was just wanting to make sure it's not, money being put aside going into the general fund. So the money that's being made off of this was just going back to these parks?
Now, it is
These two
Ebenezer,
parks.
Ebenezer and Allison Creek are in the general fund, okay? So they're departments within the general fund.
Okay.
All right, you mentioned they are part of the general fund. And remember what we do, we've got about 100 million worth of capital needs coming up. And any surplus we have in the general fund above what we need to maintain in the fund balance, we're moving towards that. And so these surpluses will be going towards that, towards the capital needs.
Is it not possible to put these for these parks, to improve just these parks and to make sure that they are sufficient?
You would never cover the cost. It would be an
I mean,
effort and
obviously,
futility.
we are right here. I'm not talking about the fund, I'm not talking about the building of it, but I'm talking about the revenues for upkeep of the park.
The expenses, the capital, we spent about 3 million, I think, Pat, on the recent renovation. Is that right?
Oh, which ones?
On the recent renovations, what was that?
There were 4 million.
$4 million, okay, so, and we're gonna be switching out to asphalt roads and to concrete pads as well, coming up new bathrooms. That little bit of staying in the black right there is never gonna come close to keeping up with the capital in there. But I'm not gonna ask these parks to generate enough profit to pay for all the capital as well. Maintaining nice parks and outdoor activity, I think, is important for quality of life for our citizens and for economic development. So to try to separate these parks and have them stand alone where they would support their own capital, I think you would end up having parks that just deteriorate and wouldn't be able to maintain
I
themselves.
agree with you on the capital, and we vote for what we want to put into these parks on capital. I'm talking about upkeep. So if we are building a fund and Ebenezer Park and Allison Creek have $200,000 in there over 3 years, and then we can look at doing repairs such as bathroom upgrades or things of that nature, as opposed to
That's,
just voting on it and pulling it out of the general
those funds, when you look at the, and I'm gonna mention the bathroom upgrades, okay, that's a,
What I don't want is us charging citizens within York County, and then this money going to all these other parks. I want the parks to be sufficient on their own.
okay, back up, the parks will never be completely sufficient on their own. They won't.
Ebenezer Park is.
No, it's
according to
not.
this right here.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
For operating, I would say.
You've got operating and you've got capital. Those are two distinct buckets. We expect our parks to maintain in the black on operating.
This is
They
operating.
will not cover their capital, okay? They just won't. That goes again towards the quality of life for our citizens, as well as for good economic development. The outdoor activity that has now become so prevalent throughout the South U.S. You go look at what Greenville County does in their outdoor passive recreation. It's very important to the quality of life for our citizens. But I think it's unrealistic to expect our parks to completely support themselves. I just don't think that's gonna be realistic. I think it's realistic to ask them to cover their operating expenses and to put a.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, and a little
is the
something towards the
operating.
capital, but I don't want you to believe that they will have enough to cover their capital.
No,
Okay.
I'm solely talking about operating expenses.
Okay.
And I know Allison Creek may not generate the revenue right away, just as Ebenezer Park didn't. We're lumping these two together, I'm fine with that. But I'm not wanting to use those funds to keep up with a park that's not generating any revenue.
I
We're
think Allison,
charging for our two,
when
in my
Allison
opinion, the
Creek,
two most attractive.
right, when Allison
that we
Creek comes
have.
on board, I expect Allison Creek P&L to match this. We've set the staffing up as well as the fees to where that park right off the bat when it opens up is, and now keep in mind, you're gonna have to look at a 6-year snapshot. That staff won't be hired at the beginning of the year either. That park will operate just as Ebenezer does. There won't be a 1 or 2 year ramp up to get to that. We expect Allison Creek to operate just as this one. And that's the logic for really keeping those where they're at in the general fund. You know, Lake Wiley area has multiple parks out there that are funded separately. Those are standalone separate funds because they're responsible for their capital as well as their operating everything. These two funds over here, and then I think, what is it, nannies, Pat? We're gonna take care of nannies. Nannies is not set up in a position right now to generate revenue, but it really doesn't generate any expenses at this point either. Pat's gonna oversee all three of these parts. He's in the same proximity, so he'll look after all of these three, and we expect those expenses to be within the general fund. The expenses for nannies are very, very minimal. I mean, really nothing at this point, other than you've got some rangers.
Most of the maintenance.
Yeah.
Would it be possible, kind of along the lines of what Brandon's talking about though, for us to see if there's $50,000 above operating expenses at the end of the year from revenue, for us to see that as a, separate, put toward whatever future expenses there may be or whatever, just so that so I think what he's wanting to watch is to make sure that line doesn't keep growing to where, not that I don't believe it would, but
I don't
where
want-
there's
yeah.
$250,000
Yeah.
in operating revenue surplus going somewhere else.
Not if we're charging
No.
the citizens. What I'm saying is, as
We-
long as they
yeah.
can maintain themselves and we can see what that number
Yeah,
is, we know.
we can
where-
certainly, I think the 8 to 10% range, I think is the sweet spot where we want to be at. And those are numbers that are easily pulled up in our
I was
financial
gonna say,
software.
just
We can
when
always
we're-
go back and look at
When we're
that.
discussing budget and stuff, I think it'd be good for us to see what that surplus number is.
Yeah, I mean,
I think so.
I didn't mean to get too far off track. That's essentially what I was asking, just to make sure that we are making sure we're not setting the rates and just saying, oh golly, we made $200,000, let's put it here. So,
I'd just like to take this opportunity to remind y'all that I want you to take this same approach to the rec fees when I'm looking out for the taxpayers in the Lake Wiley area, because it's pretty much the same principle.
So that wraps up the day use and annual pass. Sorry, onto the RV camping. Right now, we currently charge $28 for a York County resident. We're proposing $3 increase for Ebenezer Park. We're proposing more for Allison Creek Park when it opens, because it's gonna have nicer pads, improved pads, and when we complete the renovations as phase 2 at Ebenezer Park, we would then bring those in alignment with Allison Creek. But for now, that's why you see a slight difference between the two, is those sites are gonna be, have the improvements already in them. $3 increase essentially, except you come down to the senior rates, a $4 increase there, and then non-residents, a $4 increase.
I have a question about that, Mike. Would it not be that a large percentage of the people who are in those RV spots, seniors?
Our seniors?
Yeah, I mean, I just
I
wonder what
would
the
say
ratio is.
probably most of them are.
Actually, our highest percentage of campers this year were out of county.
Yeah.
60-40.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's amazing how many people, we've got in-laws that come in and they'll camp there when they're in town, yeah.
And we don't have the same sort of thing for non-residents, the discounts for seniors,
No discount for senior non-resident.
for
Now,
non-resident.
question, you said, that currently at Ebenezer, if they tent camp, they do it on the pad. Do they pay the full
Yes,
part?
they
Okay.
do.
So how long can they book those sites for? A week? Max?
14.
Up to 2 weeks.
14
Up to
days.
14 days,
limits.
okay. Gotcha.
And typically, you're booking, what, 13 months out?
13 months out. Right now, we're already into July, full on the weekends, so.
So with Allison Creek, we can't really, with any certainty, open that up yet until we get a better sense of when the construction will be complete.
Gotcha.
So that's why you might see
Start booking them
initially
up
a
and
little bit
auction
less
them off.
revenue from Allison Creek.
Exactly. Yeah, good deal.
And then, as I mentioned earlier, Allison Creek will have primitive sites, so those costs will be less. And the same kind of structures in terms of categories of fees. Moving on to the shelters, we are gonna recommend some increase to shelters. What Pat and I discussed is the event center went in, that was part of the new construction. There's also a large shelter out there. We think that could be more in line with the event center. You had no problems booking those out. In fact, they stayed booked all last
Yeah.
summer. And that's a choice to book those, so that's what we're proposing for this year.
Now,
And
how
then
does
we'll
that
also
work?
have a weekend and a weekday rate for each of those.
How does that work if somebody books a shelter, $125? How many cars do they get to bring in for that $125? How does that work as far
Yeah,
as?
so we set aside a certain amount of parking spaces for, the different shelters. Obviously, the large shelters has the most seating capacity. They're allowed, I think right now it's, 16 to 18 spots. I had to look at my notes, but we kind of just went percentage wise. And then, we're very, we give them a call the week before and just remind them that, parking is first come, first served. They only have so many spots. I mean, we've had a little bit of problems with it, but, the only other option we would have would be not to rent shelters on the weekends. And some of the state parks have done that, but we felt like that, there's just a huge draw there for those, so.
Okay.
Well, I thought it was pretty, I think for what we talked about with regards to that 5K race in September, I think that's a unique opportunity to see how that goes, right?
I agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's
Well-
been a while since you've done one. so-
Yeah, and one of the other thoughts of doing per person, right now, if we started off-site parking, we would have no way to charge for people coming in the park. You know, so, because we're charging per vehicle. So we're just thinking future out, if we were to do shuttling or anything like that, this covers us, you know, with people getting in the park, for special events such as what Tom's talking about.
So Pat, are these rates broken down into like, okay, an event center? Well, let's just go to large shelter, because event center might be a little different. So large shelter, on a July the 4th, how many times can you rent that? Is somebody gonna rent that
So
one
it's for the entire day.
for the entire day? So
Yes.
do people usually rent for the entire day?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, or several hours during the day. You know, it's just good for them to know they can come at any point during the day and the shelter's there. They pay for it in advance and they have it. So sometimes we have to guard them with our life.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
Yeah, you'll
And
have
what is
people set up
in,
at
to put an
the,
armed
in
guard on it.
parentheses where it says small shelter 2 to 5, what's that that's,
That's the numbers. There's 4 small shelters and there's shelter 2, 3, 4, and 5. Like if you call and say, I want shelter 4, it would be in that group.
okay.
And what if we have like a fishing tournament or something of that nature, and you've got a pass, are you just allowed to come in, or do we set up different fees for things like that?
They would just pay whatever we agree upon, you know, council has agreed upon as far as what we proposed.
Okay.
Most of your fishing tournaments, you know, they're gonna be in there. And we do try to work with fishing tournaments to open the gates early, because usually they wanna be on the lake by daylight. So the tournament director will contact us. We do a venue agreement, which you guys have to approve. And then they work with me to have the gates open early so all their contestants, you know, can get in.
Okay.
So, and we don't charge any extra fees for, you know, them. Now, a lot of times they'll want to rent a shelter to do their award ceremony, so they would have to pay for that.
Okay.
Same thing with the 5K, I believe they're gonna rent the events.
Yeah.
So at not at Ebenezer, but at Allison Creek, what are the, what do you anticipate people coming in for the day? If they're not RV camping, what do you think they're coming in there for?
To picnic and to fish.
And you got a kayak
And
and.
we will have a kayak and canoe launch area.
Okay.
So, and, I mean, your boaters are gonna be your major draw there as well.
So a boater coming in is gonna pay what? They're gonna just.
If they're a county resident, it'd be $3.
$3, okay,
If they're an adult, yeah.
Same as same as Ebenezer.
okay.
What's gonna happen is most of the people are just gonna buy a pass, so they don't
I
have
think
to
we'll
deal
see
with that every
season
time.
I think you
passes
will,
go
since
up this
The
year.
price of the pass is only a $10 increase from before. It's year-round and both parks, so
And we're charging by the head, it don't matter if they're in the boat or in the car.
that's exactly right.
Right.
So if you got an annual pass, you get the whole family in.
Can I go ahead and get mine tonight?
He's got
Yeah, I
some-
think it's.
Well,
Do you have some
that
with
is
you?
very important to this conversation tonight, because I need to order them.
Yeah.
And I'm needing you
So
guys
every time I see
to.
Pat,
There
he's
you
like,
go.
where are we on this?
We'll go ahead and
Yeah,
get ours
I mean,
ordered.
we are like really close to, ground zero here, so we need to.
So I just want to ask a couple more just example questions. So if somebody is there and they're camping and they've got people that are coming to just hang out with them for a few hours, those people are going to pay what?
If you're coming to the campsite, there is no fee. If you're coming to visit a camper, as long as they do not take up.
As long as they can
parking
park in that campsite
That's
area.
correct.
So, okay, so if you got 4 or 5 people coming, then they're gonna need to pay to get in or.
space. Again, if there's room at the campsite, you know, and y'all can fit them in there without, you know, having to use parking, then, you know, we won't charge those guests.
Okay.
Anything else?
And then you can see the new Allison Creek shelters charges there. And then we already talked through this, and again, as I mentioned at the retreat, the new category is parking lot boot, and that's something we've grappled with. If somebody is illegally parked there, you tow them, you know, that could be a challenge if you come back from swimming and your car's gone. Here, at least, you could call somebody and they could come out and unlock you, and it would serve as a deterrent. Hopefully, we never have to use it, but
I just
you want
worry,
to have a tool in your toolbox if you need it.
You
Yeah,
haven't been out to Ebenezer Park.
I worry a little bit about putting staff in the place to deal with that person who's been out on the boat all day and had a few to drink, and they come back and they've got to deal with them with a boot on their car. It's my only concern with it being booted, so.
Yeah, we've had that conversation on that.
The good news is we've got deputies there, you know, for the majority of the day on the weekends, so I think that's gonna help with that situation. But
They're just a call away if you need them.
Yeah, I mean, we just hate the fact that, you know, you come off the lake and you gotta pay $200 to
Yeah.
get your car out of tow, where it's $25 for a boot. I mean, you know, it's.
And if it's on
We had
weekend,
one
I
vehicle towed last year.
know on weekend sometimes if you get a car towed, you can't get it till Monday, so
That's
you
exactly
really,
right.
you know.
And then you pay the 2 days
Yeah.
of impound fee and all that kind of stuff.
That's my only concern. I like the idea. I just worry about putting staff in a
Sure.
bad spot.
Just hoping the word to get out.
Again, we want the deterrent effect.
Yeah.
You have a strong deterrent, hopefully you're
I
gonna
think it'll be
minimize that.
important to review these numbers in a year. After we've had a full year of Allison Creek and Ebenezer, I think it'll be important, to just look at these numbers again, kind of evaluate
Absolutely. We can look at
what the
retreat.
uses are, and
We can look at the retreat and we'll have more data maybe next year or something like that.
Is the sheriff's department charging us for their deputies out there?
They're not. We have worked that out, and so
Is that something we foresee having to pay for in the future?
at least not with the current arrangement. And he is looking at a contract, you know, to have folks come out there, but he's already had folks out for Pat on the weekends, because it's already full. Well, not full, but you've already got a lot of folks showing up on the
Yeah,
weekends.
some of the weekends have been busy already. I mean, the campground's been full, but day use has just been based on weather, you know. This weekend it'll be full.
And then last, for field day, propose a couple of changes, 3 changes total. Fairly modest, but in talking with Jason, you know, he's recommending these for the Gold Banner sponsorship, and then just some reservation fees for residents and non-residents would go up. But the full day would not change. It would only be because as you asked earlier, Allison, we only charge by hours at field day, whereas he's a whole full day when you rent the shelter.
Just a quick question on that, curiosity more than anything else, but the Gold Banner sponsorship gets a year, but the Silver only gets 6 months for half the price. What's the thinking behind that? Seem like it'd
It's
be
gold versus silver. I mean, maybe that's part of it, and then,
I can see it being 600, but I was just thinking, I would assume that's a smaller banner or
Maybe
something.
that they just wanna try it out and see how it works, you know, cause this, you know, you're committing to half of it, so.
Usually when I do things like with the high schools and stuff, you know, the gold is the big banner and the silver is the small banner, but if these
Right.
are same size, you just get half the amount of the time.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense.
we originally, set these fees, talked about these fees, we talked about giving a little bit of a benefit to those people who were willing to commit for a year, so that's why they were 600 and 1,000. So I think we maybe ought to still consider that, because it ends up being the same thing. We'd like for people to go ahead and commit for a year. So maybe they save $100 if they,
1,100?
yeah, maybe, or maybe 500 for the silver sponsor. And I don't know, I'd want to look at how many silver sponsors there are versus how many gold sponsors there are. And so I know we've got some good gold sponsors, but I think maybe another thing there is sometimes people want to put something up, maybe they've got an event or something. Maybe we would add an event banner, like maybe they've got something coming up in a month or 2 months, and they want to put a banner up that's just going to be up for a 30-day period, or 2 months. I don't know, but it's one of the things we originally talked about, and I still think it's probably a good idea.
So you're saying like an event,
Like a 30-day banner?
Like
30-day?
like a 30-day banner that might cost them.
Yeah.
Maybe it's $100 to put up or maybe it's not that much, but I don't know.
I think it'd be worth,
calculator to
as a
think.
business, I mean, I think it'd be worth it for a 30-day banner at $100.
So when we originally talked about it, it was only for events. It was not for a business. That was our original thing. So it keeps the businesses from coming out there and putting something up for the month of December if they're retail sales or something.
so an event being like something at the park, you mean, like
Something like the Corliers. Let's say the Corliers have got and we want to, they want to promote their schedule, something like that. Something that's community oriented, but a community oriented event.
So is that something, how often is that something that staff would decide as community oriented, or is that something that your board would decide?
I
You
think
know,
Jason.
How often would it be reviewed, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think Jason could make that determination.
So no campaign banners.
I wouldn't.
I'm just
I wouldn't. No. Not even mine. How about that?
No, I do think the 1 year needs to be a little
Okay.
bit of a break to encourage
I
people.
think I'll have that conversation. My sense is maybe we just make that 1,100 for the year instead of 1,200, and then you get a $100 break. And I'll see if Jace has any issues with that, and if not, we'll go with that.
Well, I'll tell you what I think. I think that a person who's looking at a silver banner and only wants to do 6 months might be on a budget. So reducing that one to 500 might get more people in than reducing the one that people are not concerned with paying $1,200 for. So I would say, I would keep the 1,200 and I would reduce the silver banner to 500.
But I would just buy 2 banners at 500 apiece and get 1 year.
What?
I would just buy 2 silver banners at $500 a piece and get 1 full year instead of paying 1,200. If that was the case,
Yeah.
you want to encourage
Nobody
the
would ever
longer
buy
banners.
Nobody would ever buy gold at
Yeah, they
1,200.
would.
Yeah, I would just buy silver because it costs me more to buy gold.
I like the idea of what you said first of the gold being slightly less than 2 silvers, so.
Yeah,
1,100
Yeah.
for the gold.
1,100, yeah.
Okay. I just don't want to, I don't want to, okay.
Well, if you wanted
I
to
think that
lower
gives
it,
you the
go down
$100
to
y'all's point, it
500.
gives you a
and-
$100 discount for signing up for a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is there, with this night access, is there gonna be a combo that you can buy day access, night access at a package?
They are separate. I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah, so I will say majority of our people who have not access cards buy the season pass. They just do it together, but we do not give a discount on that. And we've never had any problem because
bundle it.
number one, those boaters who are serious, they feel very secure that their stuff is secure
Yeah,
inside the park,
yeah.
and they don't mind paying that extra.
Yeah, okay.
For both.
That works.
Okay, so on this, we'll make those changes 1,100 and we'll, look at a 30-day, event for $100 and we'll make those changes.
Mike, will you let us know, I'm just curious to know, because we've been there
How
too.
many sponsors there are?
Yeah, how many there are that are silver, how many are gold? Are those, the shelter naming rights at 6,000 was not a problem. The field naming rights, who's done field naming rights and who's done Scores Tower, rights in the community center? I think some of those are still hanging out there unsold and,
Yeah, I'll see how many of those we've sold.
yeah, I'd rather sell them than have the price so high that, I mean, I'd rather,
So why don't we do that?
you know, get $15,000 and wait for $25,000 on some of those. So maybe we reduce the number of years that they're good for. So
Okay,
we'll just reevaluate that. We knew that.
Has there been any thought around allowing banners in Ebenezer and,
I don't know that we've
I
considered
mean, from an
that.
advertising perspective?
With our lease agreement with Duke Energy, they're not allowed.
They're not allowed.
Okay,
Okay,
that's-
gotcha.
That answers that question.
All right.
Probably the same thing in Allison Creek, yeah, the
And
leases are the
Tom,
same.
one of the things that we did at Field Day Park, where you see that under the notes, 1 year and the park buys the banners, that should be actually under Silver Banner, because we've tried to make those very consistent, make them all the same size and look alike, and I think because there are a lot of them there, but it just makes it look better and more attractive, so that's important, I think.
All right.
All right, so that concludes my presentation. So with that, the next step is, we had the first reading by title only last council meeting. We had talked with the chair and vice chair at the last agenda meeting about keeping this going, because to Pat's point, he'd like to move forward with passes. So we would like to bring this back at the next council meeting with the changes we discussed here, if there's no objections to that.
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
I'm good. I think I was the most vocal last time. I'm good.
Okay, just wanted to be sure.
Yeah.
So that'll be our plan going forward.
Okay.
Okay, Thank
All
you.
right, so last is Kevin.
Good evening, everyone. I'm gonna go through this fairly quick. Y'all call me if you got any questions about things. First thing I want to talk about is the sheriff's budget. Trish and myself had lunch with the sheriff and Stephen Patnos. Stephen Patnos is finance guy. He had a lot of concerns about his budget for the upcoming year. You know, during the year, the sheriff has significantly increased the pay for the prison detention center. He's at about $40,000 now. He was at 51 vacancies. He had the job for out there. He's filled 27 of those now. So his vacancies are rapidly diminishing. He's got real concerns about what's going to happen in next year's budget, him going in the red. I told him, and Mr. Winkler would appreciate this, that I'm not about to go ask for any type of millage increase or recommend one when we're generating surpluses. He's still scheduled to generate a surplus right now this year. We're thinking about $2.5 million on his portion of the general fund. My gut tells me he's probably going to dip into his reserves next year with the salary increases he had and the fact that he's filling these positions. But, we are not to the point where we want to come in here and ask for him to have a millage increase. Sheriff sent me a nice little email about that. I'll pass it out to y'all a little bit here maybe. Just expressing some of his concerns about his budget next year, how tight it's going to be. I told him, I said, well, it's kind of interesting because we have a purpose for our surpluses, and we always put it aside for with the expenses we have coming up. We plan to continue to do that to make sure we're in a position where we foresee our capital needs and don't ever have to borrow. We can adjust millage as necessary to make sure we can pay for whatever we need to pay for in cash rather than go through financing cost. But he's getting to that point. What you might see not in 23's budget, but in 24's budget, he talked about moving some of the 2 mills he has right now set aside toward his capital needs. The detention center capacity is right now on a very reasonable number. We'll be adjusting in the future, but I wanted to pass his message along to y'all about his concerns with his budget right now. He's always going to be able to have what he needs to do his job, and his budget has that. He did take the offset to his expenses in the revenue side of the column to keep in balance. The appropriation, fund balance appropriation to vacancies, it's gone from 1.3 million to 5 million. He has a plan, and he is filling his vacancies right now. So just want to make sure y'all are abreast of that and know, as these budgets are tightening up, this is what we've been working towards. 2024 is the year where I think we will even contemplate or talk about a possible adjustment in the general fund, but not for 2023. But I want to pass that along from the sheriff to y'all where he's at right now. Getting into the rest of the general fund, we've talked for a while now about raise pool. We have in our budget at this point a 5% merit-based raise pool for the employees, and we've also got a class and comp study to be done during fiscal year 23 as well. I expect our vacancies, and we've started to fill positions right now. Our HR department, 1,200 employees, we're going from 4, we've got 6, and in next year's budget we're in the 7th. The additional personnel is for the recruitment and retention of our employees as well as additional training that we're not doing right now. We've always had a very small HR department compared to the size of our county. We're asking more of HR department in areas they've never done before. We were fortunate enough to hire a young lady from Asheville that's coming in to head up the recruitment side of HR, and she's going to also be heavily involved in the training that we give our supervisors. I think we're at the point in the county now we need to be doing better training for supervisors that step in that role they've never supervised before. I had a discussion with her today about that specifically. So our vacancies will start shrinking. For years we've talked about this recession coming, and during the recession, that's when people go to work at the government, and that's what I expect we're going to see happening over the next 18 months. Millages. I'll let you know right now our general fund's not in balance. The general fund, others not. The sheriff has his in, solicitor does. Ours is not. We're hoping to get some good news from the state regarding retirement health insurance. I've talked with darn everybody I know. I talked today with Senator Johnson a little bit about this. The Senate budget nor the House budget at this point has anything in there for the employer portion of health care. I think I've told all y'all this right now. It's scheduled to go up 18.1%. That's a hard pill to swallow. I'm going to probably end up sending an email to my senator asking for some compassion in that and maybe phasing this stuff out over a number of years. The House version of their budget has the tax cuts, I think, over 5 or 6 years. The Senate's version is a little more aggressive. We're going to ask for some compassion with health insurance increases. But as it stands right now, and I don't expect a general fund millage increase of any kind, we are going to see the rural fire go up 0.2 of a mil. We have a 10-year plan on rural fire. That millage increase is planned, and we will continue to see those millage increase as we add greater fire protection in the unincorporated area. The convenience center, that millage will go up 0.2 of a mil as well. This is something we planned and talked about. Even with that 0.2 of a millage, we expect them to lose $100,000. Their fund balance is in the position where they can absorb that. We could have gone up 0.4. We did not do the 0.2. You'll figure that out real quick in a second. The debt service millage, because we're not adding new debt as we're paying stuff off, that is going to drop 0.4 of a mil. So if you're doing your math, we have no tax increase for anybody in the county. And if you live in municipalities, you're actually going to see a small decrease in your taxes from us. Value of a mill, You know, we continue to be very prosperous in York County and very fortunate for where we're at. The unincorporated Vyavia Mills projected to be 990. The Vyavia Mill countywide, $1,650,000. It's up about 3.5%. You know, we've got 3.5% is great growth in the Vyavia Mill. But when you look at, you know, the cost of everything, the expenses going on, you know that's not keeping up with it. With the raises, the cost of our employees, as well as the cost of other items, again, somewhere in the future, growth will not be able to pay for the growth. That's just reality. I don't want to BS y'all about that and say, oh, we'll never have to raise taxes, this or that. It's going to be when we have, when we've really tapped out, and it's going to be staff's responsibility to prove to y'all why that millage increase is necessary. But I want you to know at some point in the future that will be necessary. It's not this year, I can promise you that. I hope for it not to be the year after that. But as much as our Vyavia Mill grows, we're not going to keep up with inflation. That's just the bottom line. The benefit to us is we'll have 7 or so, what's the millage, Aaron, 7, 8 mills in debt service? We're going to see that go away completely in 2024. So even if we do have to raise taxes, you're still going to see a tax decrease from the county to our taxpayers when that happens. And we're able to do that because, again, we try to operate always thinking ahead and putting ourselves in a position where we're not going to ever get behind the ball having to go out and borrow money. We monitor, you saw the retreat, we monitor our capital expenses and make sure we've got the funding in place that's necessary. Our capital expenses such as Riverbend, if that can be spread out to make it affordable for us, we will do that. We're not going to rush anything to where we have to go out and borrow. CVB, $300,000 of ATAX, okay? So we can all not worry about that anymore. We're doing what we said we'd do with that. Water and sewer rate increases. I've looked a lot at this. This has gotten a lot of attention lately. I'll put out some numbers here. In the York County, over the last 20 years, York County has raised water rates 42%, sewer rates 52% in the last 20 years. In the last 8 years, 80 and 78% has been the increase in our cost of water. We are not going to always be able to continue to absorb that. You know, we're past, this year we're doing a 5 and 2% increase, not the 11 and 3%. We're absorbing it in the rest of ours, and you got to keep in mind when we don't make the water, okay? So we got to buy the water. We have a cost of the water, then we have the same cost Rock Hill does for our personnel as well as our equipment, all the capital, the water towers and lines, and everything else we have to run. And keep in mind, we are a growing county. We haven't put all that stuff down. At some point, you know, we're going to have to start passing more of those along to our customers. But as of right now, we're just, again, passing along the 5 and the 2. And we're going to continue to monitor that. And we're not just looking at this year. We're looking at, you know, the near future as well. And keep in mind, we have those 2 studies out there. At some point in time, we do want to be, we need to be in the business, the water business and the wastewater business. And I'll tell you all now, and we've all talked about this before, that's not going to be something that we have to support our general fund either. That's going to be a standalone entity to provide affordable water and wastewater for York County and other counties as well. We're looking at a regional approach. We're going to talk to Lancaster and Chester County about this. Affordable water and wastewater, affordable utilities are key for economic development. And, you know, again, we beat this to death at the retreat. I won't get too much into it, but we are still actively pursuing that. So with all that said, those are all the updates I got as of right now for y'all with where we're at in the budget. When we talk again next, I'll have a little more details, but any questions about where we're at?
Go ahead.
I have a question. I hear rumors that there's some adjustments being made with the Biden bucks and the ARPA money and where we're spending and what we're spending and what we're doing.
It's you know, that's the main hat Trish wears. And she's also, I'll tell you, she's been very involved in the budget this year, reviewing everybody's budgets. The Biden bucks, we actually thought about talking about that some tonight. But since you asked, I'll go into a little details. Trish, you speak up if I misspeak, please. You know, we're a county, the size of our county. We are basically have the most stringent requirements of what we're doing. You know, water and sewer, we originally had planned to do about 25, we had a $25 million project. That project came in at about 14. I had some contingency on top of that. A lot of the things we're trying to do are, you know, they're difficult. Like right now, we're going through and we're vetting the radios very, very thoroughly. Because the radio expenses we're buying with the buying bucks are gonna be over $1 million, there's a lot of requirements we have to meet. We're working with our external auditors, we're working with John Carter and Alan Brandon over there to make sure we're doing what we need to do. We, number one, first and foremost, want to make sure we spend the money wisely and on things we can do. We're avoiding areas where we can possibly end up having to write a check back. We don't want to do that for sure. And we're also making sure we do everything we can. We're doing a position where we're giving out bonuses with these monies. We're not going down that path again. We're going to pay people the traditional way. There are some challenges right now with making sure we have enough eligible expenses to going through that. The water and sewer is the safest area, but one of our primary focuses, and I'll talk about radios, for instance, the radios are funded really through countywide taxes. If it's funded through countywide taxes, that's what we want to prioritize, and that's what we focus on first and foremost. Water and sewer is almost like a last resort in there on that. But as of right now, we've not had any dramatic changes that we plan to do, but there are some challenges. We talked with Mr. Hudspeth about that, and we're talking with our external auditors, we're talking with NACO, we're talking with Southern counties. It is a constant monitoring battle. We had stuff just, was it today? We got back from 911. We're going to be sending to Elliott Davis to make sure they're going to be fine with that. Our top priority again is to make sure we don't do anything with these funds that are going to get ourselves in trouble. And, you know, then we make sure we're spending it in the wisest fashion possible where it benefits the most taxpayers.
Well, on my way out the door, I will remind you that there is a placeholder for about $5 million that could be used for broadband to help the western side of the county. And that was something that all of us said we wanted held there. So if that is something,
I think
if we're under on some expenditures, there's $5 million out there that we could do something with.
well, and this is where broadband's at right now too, is largely driven the information we got from the state. The state apparently has a surplus of broadband money. And the guidance we've got from them is don't spend your money there. We got more than enough on the broadband. Broadband is very, very well funded right now. That is an area that, you know, Robert, we haven't forgotten about that, and we won't. But as of right now, and unless we hear otherwise from the state, I think the state has more than ample funding from that. You know, I think you can talk to the association of counties, find out about that as well. But that's something that we talk about on a regular basis as well. Nobody's told us that has changed, so that's the assumption we're working under. But no, we haven't forgotten about that. Tom?
Yeah, so, first of all, Kevin, thank you for that information. Council of Aging, in RFATS, in the last 5 months, I've been working with David Hooper, and David and I have talked a little bit about this. What we've been working on is to get access transportation to the disabled and elderly people from within Tega Fort Mill, and Lake Wiley. Alice and I have talked about this also. The process is moving forward at this point. Everything it's looking very positive. In fact, right now, David Hooper is going now to get the matching funds, which he expects to fund 75% of the on-demand cost for the people in Tega Fort Mill in Lake Wiley. And again, this on-demand service is available in other parts of York County. But when you call on-demand service in access in my district, in Allison's district, and Joel's district, et cetera, in parts of Fort Mill, they can't get it because it's being blocked by a federal overlay coming out of Charlotte as part of their transportation program. So what we're doing is we're bringing in access into the area and allowing the elderly and disabled to call, and they can be brought to doctor's appointments. They can be brought to the pharmacy, places where they need to be served. So I'm letting you all know this, and David, you and I talked probably 2 months ago about this. They're coming back with the final numbers on this, and we're gonna, as a whole, we would represent roughly 25% of the overall cost. He's estimating he's gonna be able to cover 75% of this. That cost will then be split up amongst the two municipalities in York County and the unincorporated area. Probably the estimated cost for us per year is probably gonna be about $50,000 for the on-demand cost, but I wanna share this with you, and that $50,000 should cover both Allison and I's unincorporated area. But I wanna share this with you because we are moving forward, and I know, David, you and I talked, so I wanna make sure everybody's up to speed.
Okay, that's good information. The 50,000 is a good number. And it reminded me of something I meant to remind y'all about. As of right now, Karen, you correct me if I'm wrong, I think Mr. Winkler is the only one that has spent the funds set aside for council members for projects in their district.
No,
You,
I've already submitted mine.
okay, I stand corrected. Thank
Yeah,
you, Tom.
yeah.
But this is something I start rattling the department heads at this time of year as well, particularly on capital things that they've not been able to get to during the year. Please don't forget about that. That's not, it doesn't roll over.
Make sure if you've submitted those, there's a form that goes with that, and it comes before finance and operations for us to approve it, so,
Well, you're speaking of C funds.
no.
No, we're
Oh,
not.
okay,
This
then,
is our
then
discretionary funds.
discretionary funds.
Yeah.
No, I have not.
Okay,
I have
all right,
not. No.
You know, what we might do,
have
and
not.
these go through finance and operations. I mean, Robert, if you'd be fine with this, if y'all wouldn't mind getting Karen to give each of y'all a accounting of what you've got still remaining, and
Mm-hmm.
we can disperse it through finance and operations, and y'all can get the forms to fill out and complete, and then send them back to finance and operations.
And I know what
Yeah.
I spent, so I'm good with mine.
Yeah.
I've got a few others. I've just got one municipality that has asked for more than I was planning on spending in one municipality, but I got a couple others that aren't asking for anything, so
Yeah.
they might wind up getting what they're asking.
Yeah.
But, you know, we're in April right now, so the year is winding down, and these are not things, you know, I always
Yeah.
hate it when it's last minute, you're trying to get those out. So I work with Karen and Robert through F&O to get the numbers and forms out to y'all, so you can get those completed.
That'd be
I think
great.
people have, you know, and I'll throw it out there, you know, Pathway, I think is to talk to some of y'all about that. That's perfectly fine as well.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that I'll throw out there now, you can't spend your $20,000 on a recurring expense. That's only one of the key limitations on that.
So I'll keep you posted though on this access rate. It's gonna go through, but it's exciting news because we can finally serve the elderly and disabled in our area. You know, because we have some that can't even go to dialysis because they're disabled and Uber won't pick them up and bring them there. It's a shame. This has been going on for years, and I know, you know, you run into the same issue in Lake Wiley. So it's exciting that we're able to move forward with this. But again, I just want to make sure you're up to speed.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
All right, anything else?
I just want to say thanks, Mike, for all the numbers and the.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I feel a lot better about it, so thank you.
Yeah.
All right, then, sure we don't wanna go a little longer, cause Tom's got an anniversary to go celebrate, so we can,
I gotta keep this marriage alive after 25 years. That's right. Yeah. There you go.
All right, then I guess I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Yep, we're out of here.